Power, territory, purity. For centuries, these were the obsessions of Europe's great royal houses. To protect their power, expand their territory, and preserve the purity of their blood, they kept turning to a single, fateful strategy: marriage. But not just any marriage. They married within their own families. Uncles married nieces, first cousins married first cousins, and in doing so, they wove a web of alliances that made them the masters of a continent. But this strategy came at a terrible cost. A cost paid in blood, in madness, and in the collapse of entire empires. This is the story of how the world's most powerful dynasties, in a desperate quest to secure their legacy, ended up engineering their own extinction. Picture the most powerful man on Earth. He rules a global empire, but he can't even chew his own food. His jaw is so deformed he can barely speak. This wasn't some freak accident or a rare disease. This was the direct result of a 300-year genetic experiment his own family conducted on themselves. This is the story of how the Habsburg dynasty, in its obsessive quest for pure blood, bred itself into oblivion. To understand how this happened, you have to ask, why? Why would the most powerful families on the planet resort to a practice that seems so obviously self-destructive? The answer lies in the brutal politics of medieval and Renaissance Europe. Dynasties were like brands, and marriage was the ultimate merger and acquisition. The House of Habsburg, which started as a minor family with a small castle in Switzerland, became masters of this game. Their motto said it all: let others wage war. You, happy Austria, marry? And marry they did. Through a series of brilliant unions, they snapped up Burgundy, Spain, and its sprawling global empire. Power and land were passed down through blood. So to keep all that wealth in the family, the solution seemed simple: keep the blood in the family too. Over 200 years in the Spanish Habsburg line, 9 out of 11 marriages were between close relatives. Uncle-niece unions became disturbingly common. They thought they were preserving the sanctity of their royal blood, creating a dynasty so pure its rule would be eternal. They had no idea they were lighting a genetic fuse that would burn for generations, leading to a catastrophic explosion. The first signs of trouble were subtle, but they were there. Across the generations, the Habsburg gene pool grew dangerously shallow. Infant and child mortality rates within the dynasty soared to 50%, a staggering figure even for the time, and far higher than the 20% seen in the general population. Those children who did survive often carried the family's signature trait, the Habsburg jaw. You can see it in their portraits, generation after generation. A jutting lower jaw and a prominent lower lip, the visible markers of a condition called mandibular prognathism. What might have started as a distinctive family feature grew more extreme with every inbred union. A quirk became a deformity. For some, it was a minor issue. For others, it was a debilitating condition that made it a struggle to eat or speak. But the jaw was just the most obvious sign. With each generation, the odds of inheriting rare, recessive genetic disorders skyrocketed. The family tree, once a symbol of their power, was becoming a map of their genetic decay. Take Don Carlos of Spain, a prince in the mid-16th century. He was the product of a marriage between 2 first cousins, meaning he had only 4 great-grandparents instead of the usual 8. He was plagued by physical ailments and shocking mental instability, with violent outbursts that hinted at the deeper problems to come. The dynasty was producing heirs, but they were increasingly frail, sickly, and unstable. The fuse was burning faster. That genetic time bomb finally detonated with the birth of Charles II of Spain in 1661. He was the culmination of 2 centuries of intensive inbreeding. His parents were an uncle and a niece. His grandmother was also his aunt. All 8 of his great-grandparents were descendants of the very same couple. The result was a king so inbred that his genetic makeup was more scrambled than that of a child born to a brother and a sister. An almost unheard-of scenario in human populations. His inbreeding coefficient was a staggering 0.254, the highest ever recorded in the dynasty. From birth, Charles was a walking catalog of ailments. He suffered from seizures, constant digestive issues, and was so weak that he couldn't walk until he was 8 years old. He didn't speak until he was 4. His Habsburg jaw was so severe that his 2 rows of teeth couldn't meet, leaving him unable to chew his food. His tongue was so large it made his speech almost impossible to understand. Known as El Hekiduct, or the Bewitched, his own people believed he was the victim of a curse, never suspecting the curse was in his own blood. He was impotent and infertile, a biological dead end. The dynasty's relentless pursuit of blood purity had produced an heir who couldn't continue the bloodline. Charles was the living, breathing, suffering embodiment of his family's tragic mistake. He wasn't just the end of the line. He was a warning, cast in human form. Charles II's inability to have a child wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a geopolitical crisis waiting to happen. For decades, the other powers of Europe watched and waited, knowing that the king's death would leave the entire Spanish Empire, with its lands in Italy, the Netherlands, and the Americas, up for grabs. When Charles finally died in 1700, at just 38 years old, the fuse his ancestors had lit reached its end. His death immediately triggered the War of the Spanish Succession, a brutal continent-hanging conflict that lasted for over a decade. The House of Bourbon in France and the Austrian branch of the Habsburgs both claimed the throne, plunging Europe into a war that would redraw the map of the continent. By the time the war ended, the Spanish Habsburg dynasty was officially extinct. The Spanish throne went to the French Bourbons, and the empire was carved up by the winners. The grand strategy that was meant to secure Habsburg power forever had led directly to its obliteration. The family that married its way to the top of the world had now vanished from Spain, its legacy consumed by the very fire it had so carefully built. But the Habsburgs weren't alone. The obsession with blood purity was a European epidemic, and its consequences rippled through other powerful families. In Great Britain, Queen Victoria, herself part of a tightly knit royal family, was a carrier for hemophilia, a rare genetic bleeding disorder. Since her 9 children married into royal houses across the continent, this royal disease spread to the monarchies of Germany, Spain, and most famously, Russia. The heir to the Russian throne, Tsarevich Alexei Romanov, suffered from agonizing bouts of bleeding. His mother's desperate search for a cure led her to the mystic Rasputin, whose influence at court helped destroy public trust and contributed to the fall of the Romanov dynasty. Meanwhile, Britain's King George III, the monarch who lost the American colonies, suffered from periodic bouts of severe mental illness, earning him the nickname the Mad King. Modern analysis suggests he may have had porphyria, a rare hereditary blood disorder that can trigger hallucinations and paranoia. His illness caused huge political instability. And then there was Queen Anne, the last of the Stuart dynasty, who endured an almost unimaginable tragedy. She had at least 17 pregnancies, but not a single one of her children survived to adulthood. Her family's reign ended with her. In every corner of Europe, the story was the same. The crown and the curse were inseparable. The story of the Habsburgs is a profound and tragic irony. The very tool they used to build their power, strategic inbreeding, became the weapon of their own destruction. Their hunt for purity led to genetic chaos, Their desire to create a line of perfect rulers produced kings who were physically and mentally incapable of ruling. Their obsession with preserving their dynasty is what ultimately ensured its extinction. It's a stark, cautionary tale about hubris, a story of what happens when the thirst for power ignores the fundamental laws of nature. These families saw themselves as being above the rest of humanity, but they were brought down by a force they couldn't control: their own biology. Their grand family trees, once a source of immense pride, now stand as a monument to their folly, a lesson written in scandal, madness, and collapse, reminding us that even the mightiest empires can fall from within. If you found this story of tragic history fascinating, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories from the strange and surprising corners of the past. And let us know in the comments which historical train wreck you'd like us to explore next. Thanks for watching.